today's topic this week, depending on how long you've actually been in business, you may have started in the era of traditional marketing methods being the real dominant tool to get new patients in your med spa. And what do I mean when it comes to traditional marketing methods? So if you're old school, then you know what I mean. And I would love for you to type in the chat or comment box what traditional marketing methods you're currently using or are considering. And just to give you a little reminder of what traditional marketing methods are before the digital world has taken over, I'm talking about radio, TV, direct mail, magazines, billboards, newspaper, and even the yellow book. So I'm really interested in the chat bot or chat box of what have you tried in the past? What are you considering doing? So I see some messages about radio and utilizing that. And I'm actually a big fan of radio. I spent many, many years in radio before transitioning over to my main focus being digital marketing. And I'm going to cover today the pros, the cons, and how to effectively use all the different types of traditional media out there in conjunction with your digital marketing efforts, because I believe that all marketing works. I really do. Even though, I'm not in radio or television or direct mail, you name all the different traditional forms of media, I am a true believer in all of them. But just like any tool, there's a way to properly use it. And if you don't use the platform or the tool properly, you are going to waste your dollars and get extremely frustrated and believe that the platform or the marketing media just doesn't work. And I have to tell you that it's not true. And that's how, even after all these years and all of the digital world marketing really taking over, there's still a time and a place for traditional media. So I'm going to be going over that today. But here's the thing, guys. So first and foremost, unfortunately, you and I don't have the same marketing budget as Pepsi, McDonald's, Lexus, Allergan, Botox, Cool Sculpting, right? So it's really important for you to choose wisely and prioritize your marketing dollars to make sure you're not spreading yourself too thin. That's actually one of the biggest mistakes I see med spas doing with their marketing dollars. And so they come to me like, oh, I tried that, I tried this, and it didn't work. And oftentimes it's because they didn't use the platform properly and either didn't put enough time or budget towards it. And before I dive into that, I really want to know if recently, in the last week, I can almost guarantee you in the last month, have you had one of these media platforms reps contact you or pop in for you to purchase their services? So has a radio rep, a TV rep, a billboard, a yellow book, you name it, have they stopped in and asked you to purchase their media, their services for them? And my guess is that is yes. Donnie, a rep called on you yesterday, a resounding yes. And it's overwhelming, right? It's like if they're a really good sales rep, they make it sound wonderful and like almost that it's a no-brainer and you're going to get huge, massive returns on investment, right? That's their job, to sell you something. But guess what? It's just simple as throwing your money at them and letting them go to work. Now, if you have a really good representative or consultant for each of these different media companies, and they've been doing it long enough, they should be able to recommend best practices and strategies for it to be successful. And I'm going to go over those today with some of the bigger forms of traditional media that I'm still seeing results with clients. Okay. So before I go into specific platforms, I just want to, it's so important that I go over really the 4 keys to any successful marketing campaign, regardless of what platform you are on. And I drink the Kool-Aid when it comes to this. This is like such basic 101 marketing that I literally learned like 20 years ago when I was in college. And I could say that like, that's probably one of like the little small things that I actually learned about marketing and didn't learn it actually on the job or in real life, is the 4 keys to marketing, which is frequency, consistency, the right target audience or demographic, and messaging. So too often, if you don't hit them with enough frequency, right, because we're so inundated with so many different impressions and forms of media distractions, that they're not going to consume it. When I first started, over 15 years ago in marketing, I was taught that, you need 4 to 6 touch points. And then years later, it was 8 to 10 touch points. So I haven't even seen a recent update on what the data tells us of how many touch points you need of frequency to convert, a lead or an impression to an actual patient in your door. It's probably somewhere near 10 to 12 plus, right? So you've got to hit them with frequency. You have to hit them with consistency. You can't just expect to 1 month, 1 week, 1 impression, one time you send them a direct mail piece. It doesn't work that way. You have to have the right target audience, right? If you're trying to, recommend your services to someone that doesn't fall within your target demographic, you're wasting your money no matter how cheap it is. And then finally, the messaging. The messaging has to be clear, easy, and memorable. And so you want to follow those 4 keys: frequency, consistency, right target audience with the right messaging. So you got to commit that to memory. Okay, so I'm going to dive into some pros and cons to the different traditional media platforms. And if you decide to use them, some best practices on how to effectively use them. But before I add this, one thing I want to make very clear, and that I talked about before, is that you don't want to spread your marketing dollars too thin. So the best strategy to go about adding additional platforms is not jumping one platform to the other. So for example, if you're investing digital advertising dollars, and that can mean a lot of things, and organic, right? You don't want to then be like, oh, well, that was good and that's great, and I'm going to either greatly reduce or stop that and try something different for a while, right? Because you want to continue with your frequency and consistency and make the platforms work together, make each of them work better because of the collaboration of the strategies and what I call surrounding the consumer, surrounding your patient, right? So maybe they see you on organic, they see you on SEO with your Google reviews, they see your paid advertising on Facebook and Instagram, and then they're in the car and they hear you on the radio, or maybe they're watching the big game and they hear you, or they see you on television or on the morning news or during American Idol, right? And all of those messages are consistent and working together, right? So you don't want to jump from one platform to another. You want to get really good at one and then just keep adding, which means you got to keep growing your marketing budget. You don't stop and then start something new. That's the worst thing that you can do. Okay. You got to keep growing your marketing budget. And depending on what your current monthly revenue is and how aggressive you want to be with growing your new patients and how good you are in rebooking them, and your average spend per patient will tell you what your marketing dollars can be. And guys, here's the key. The more you can spend in your marketing, the more patients you are going to attract. And you can spend more money in your marketing if you have a high average spend per patient and a really good rebooking rate. And that's a whole nother training, so I won't divulge there. Okay, so radio. I love me some radio. Spent many, many years in radio. Radio is really good to build your brand. It's really good to be known before you are needed. But there are some definite tricks to make sure that you are buying radio properly. You first have to make sure that you are on the right station. Guys, if you are trying to target a female that is, 40 to 55 years old, that is affluent, I wouldn't spend my money on a sports station. But if you are trying to attract a male that has ED and disposable income, by all means, be on the sports station. So basically what I'm saying is make sure you're on the right station. Don't allow a radio rep to give you the kit and caboodle of all their stations in their cluster and tell you about how they're going to have all of these spots for you or commercials for you when you want to really focus on your target audience. The next part is make sure that you are in prime programming, which is morning and afternoon drive for the majority of any radio station. Billboards and news reports and weather, traffic, those are really good things to be on as well for name recognition. Radio is good for you to be known before you are needed, right? But it really requires at least a 3 to 6 months commitment to build that frequency and consistency. And you want to make sure that you have a really memorable message, like your authority bill, your credential statement. That is a really great thing to utilize in your creative when it comes to radio, and a musical image that really makes you pop and stand out. Okay, so TV is another great one for brand builder. I will tell you, I'm less excited about TV because between YouTube and organic social media, you can really boost video content so much less expensive and really narrow your target of who you're trying to reach, your audience, compared to TV. So, and because TV is very expensive, you're competing against, car dealers and Coke, and so it's not for very many med spas out there. But if you do TV and you, as a brand builder, right, then you want to make sure, because of DVR and people recording, that you're on a programming that people watch live, which would be news, live sporting events, and then prime time TV. But TV is very, very expensive. So unless you got a ginormous marketing budget, I don't recommend TV for med spas. The next is direct mail. Okay, I'm actually a real big fan of direct mail, but there is a real way for you to do it successfully. And I had a local client years ago share with me this strategy, and I thought it was just freaking brilliant, in the sense of she rents or leases her own commercial printing machine that is in color. And she has basically worked with a graphic designer that has built different templates, and even her brochures for her, for that matter, that she can make tiny little updates on. And then she prints them herself, and then she delivers them herself to the post office and sends them by zip code in direct mail. Now, this goes against the whole saying of target audience and buying lists and sending them out, but you have to consider what the cost of a stamp is these days to be able to do that. So expensive. Versus in bulk mail, where you just target a zip code, then you are able to target an area for pennies. We're talking pennies. So don't go to a direct mail company that's going to charge you $500 to $1,000 to create the graphic, right? And then they're going to charge you, probably $1, $2, $3, depending on a variety of things for you to print it, and then go and pay 50 cents a piece to send it out. It's literally the difference. We're talking about hundreds versus thousands of dollars. And another thing about direct mail is don't do it once and be like, oh, I only got one, or I didn't get any. That is not a good enough sample size to decide if it is going to work for you. Do it for 6 months straight, every single month, and then tell me how it's working for you. And if you follow the principles that I just shared with you, and that you offer a product at a price, and not use it as branding, but have a real call to action, direct mail can be successful for you, and it can be affordable if you use the strategy that I just applied. Okay, but otherwise it can get very, very costly, and you won't have enough runway to want to continue investing in it to get a true return on investment. But the client that I was mentioning, she said almost every single day I get someone that walks in with that direct mail piece and hands it to them to schedule an appointment or redeem it at the appointment that they called and scheduled. So it can be very powerful, but the math does not add up if you do it the traditional way where they come to, a direct mail company comes to you and you're paying for the graphic each time, and you're paying for the printing costs, and you're paying for the expensive targeted mail lists. So make sure you use those strategies. Next, billboards. Okay, so billboards are cool, right? They're really like, oh, check me out, like my med spa or my face or your ass, whatever it is that strategy you decide is on the side of the freeway. It's a billboard, right? It can be very exciting. But one thing I want you to think about, okay, so if you likely drive the same way every single day to get to work, to get to your med spa. And I want you to think about or really look at the billboards on your daily route. And then think about how memorable they are for you, or when you notice them, or start paying attention to see like, well, how long is it? Has that same billboard been up? Because this goes back to that frequency and an impression and whatnot. With a billboard, when you first change creatives, you see it, it's like, oh, that's cool. That's interesting. I'm going to call them. But after, 5 to 7 days of driving by that same billboard, all of a sudden, you don't even see it. You zoned out. Years ago, I had a 45-minute commute when I had an office downtown each way. And I could tell you, like, sometimes I would like, oh, geez, I'm at work, because I was so zoned out, because I didn't even have to think to drive into work, because I did it for almost a decade straight. And that's why billboards, one, you have to make sure that they're putting you on high traffic areas, which is expensive, but two, that you're updating the creatives with a specific call to action regularly, at least once a month, because otherwise, literally, you're going to get phone calls, and then after a week, nothing, dead. So you need to negotiate how frequently they are going to change your creative. You need to have a strong call to action with an offer for it to be effective. It's not my favorite tool to use for branding. I would much rather see you use radio for branding, where like there was I saw a billboard where they had, Botox was kind of their gateway to everything. And they were pretty inexpensive and had a great promo for new patients for Botox. And that was really powerful for him for a time being. But then he constantly had to move it around town because he didn't have a new offer. And so he had to find a new audience because they zoned out. They didn't even see it anymore after a while. So that's my thoughts on billboards. The next is magazines. So magazines are some really beautiful local magazines, I'm sure that you've seen out there. And there's two different ways for magazines to be successful, in my opinion. And it's really important that you know the demographics of who is reading that magazine. So one of my favorite ways to use magazines is what I call advertorials, where they don't position you necessarily as like an advertiser, but they position you as a contributor to content in writing an article. Now, you may have to write it, or maybe they'll write it for you. But the long story short is that you want to educate people about, like a new great treatment or a device for weight loss and cellulite, or, like the best regimen to, turn back the clock by 10 years, and you give your recommendation so that you can show your expertise, your personality, be a storyteller, show social proof. And when you present yourself as contributing content and education and not so salesy, then if you have the right target audience, then people are going to view you as an expert and seek you out. And then in conjunction with it, I like, pages later, maybe you have a specific, offer, event, promo that is an advertisement. But the best result is when you can have that advertorial, when you are really contributing content and education when it comes to magazines. But it's what I find is it's very expensive. So if it's really not someone that's in your target audience that's consuming that magazine, and it's just the traditional, little ad that everyone buys, I don't see it very successful for too many med spas. So the next one is newspaper. And I remember, again, about 15 years ago, when I was trying to cultivate leads, like I would read the newspaper to call on people. Am I showing my age a little bit? And now the newspaper used to be like this thick, and now it's like so baby thin. In fact, most people don't even get the newspaper printed. They just read it online, and there's digital ads, right? So a lot of times your local newspaper is now going to be talking to you about digital advertising. And it's just not my favorite tool for med spas to use, because it's more, think about it with a car dealer, right? You open up the newspaper and it's like product at a price. Car, this is the price. Furniture, this is the price. And so sometimes your local paper will, again, let you do that advertorial route, like I was talking about with the magazine. But it's just changed so much. Newspaper is not my favorite medium or recommendation specifically for med spas. So if you have any specific questions over traditional media that you would like that I haven't covered, please add that to the chat and I can address those. But just to recap, I recommend, again, committing to memory and getting a true understanding, because it's different with every media platform out there. Applying the 4 keys to marketing looks a little bit differently. So frequency, consistency, target audience, and messaging. So for example, with when it comes to like frequency and consistency, like you're going to know right away if your offer in your campaign is working with digital advertising in the first month. But with radio and television, you really needed to run 3 to 6 months to really get a true understanding and idea if it's working for you. And within that, you need to make sure that you're hitting the minimum selling frequency. So for example, with radio, again, they used to say the minimum selling frequency when I first started 15 years ago was 3.5. And then towards the end of career, when I was scheduling radio spots, that minimum frequency was at least a 4, if not a 5, because all of a sudden there was so much competition from social media and digital marketing that traditional form of media really had to up their game to compete, which unfortunately makes it that much more expensive for you to use those platforms. So frequency, consistency, target audience, and messaging. And don't dilute your ad dollars too much. Don't spread them too thin. Don't bounce from one platform to another. Those really are the cardinal mistakes that I see local businesses use, because they get swayed away from a good sales rep that promises them the world and then doesn't deliver. So those are my big takeaways that I would love for you to really learn, consider, is you are called on daily, definitely regularly, from other media platforms out there so that you can make an informed decision. Because I'm a big fan. I think all marketing works, but you got to use it properly. Like, just like there's people out there that say, I spent a lot of money on Facebook or Instagram, and it didn't work. It didn't do anything. And the reality is that like it works, but if you don't use it properly, that platform is not going to work for you. So take that to heart. And I hope that you make really great decisions with your marketing dollars and you continue to build on really developing your marketing mix so that you don't become dependent on just one platform. Because here's another really interesting statistic, is that with every media platform that you use, you will find that it's going to bump up and increase the result of your previous platforms by 20%. So for example, if you in your local market, you're doing you're doing organic and direct response ads with Facebook and Instagram, and then all of a sudden you decide to do radio, and you're following all of the keys to successfully implementing a radio strategy, what you're going to find is that your digital marketing efforts, your social media efforts, are going to improve by 20%, because that platform is bringing more attention and awareness because you're hitting them in multiple sensories, right? So they see it, they watch it, they hear it. And so the more platforms that you use, the better all of your medias are going to work if you have a consistent message and that your offers of what you want to be known for are working together and not independently. So I hope that helps as you are developing your marketing mix and your annual marketing calendar, and that you can apply the strategies that I just shared with you today. So thank you guys so much for liking. Make sure you smash that like button and to subscribe to our channel so that you can catch even more great training.